So whenever you are this is about segues and how to transition between screens. So whenever you are trying to move between screens, you need to do just about four things probably. So you need to connect the two view controllers using the um, the UI on the UI storyboard. You need to connect the two controllers, and then let's say there's two view controllers, calculate BC and result BC. So you're basically doing a calculation, sending it over to the result view controller, and then you're dismissing the result view controller screen. So the first thing you have to do is connect the two view controllers so that a segue has been defined. And then the second thing you need to do is to figure out what things you need to pass over to the other controller, to the result controller, so it can display it or do whatever you want with it. And the way you do that, or the reason you do that next, is because when you've created this segue in the storyboard, and one of the methods that are accessed as soon as the segue happens is this prepare for function. So you want to make sure that you have all your ducks lined up for what you want to have happen over in that other location. And then the third thing you want to do is define where it is you want the transaction to happen. So for example, if you have a calculate button, then there's a button action function that you created, that control drag thing. And you have a button action function where you want to cause the transition to happen. So you want to make it go to that new screen. And so there's this perform segue method in the UI view controller class that you access then. And then the last thing you want to do is make the screen disappear and go back to the other screen so you can do another calculation. And so then you access the dismiss method in the UI view controller class. So let me walk you through these in detail. So the first thing you want to do is connect the two view controllers together by control clicking and dragging to the other segue. So when you make this connection, you're using the functionality of the UI storyboard segue because it is deciding, because it enables you to do this connection. So all you have to do is pull up your storyboard and do a control drag between these two locations. And then once you do that, you'll see a little bubble that appears between, you'll see this bubble right here that appears between the two items. And that is your segue. And when you create it, it gives you the option to do different things like present as a popover or present modally, which a lot of people like because it makes the screen sort of magically slide up. Anyway, so you can have it present modally. So and then once you do, so you define that modal presentation, but you can change what your definition is over here on the right if you decide you want to do something different. And then the next thing you have to do is name it. So you have to make sure that it has an identifier that you can use later. So here, as I hovered over here, you saw the UI storyboard. I don't know how to get that. UI storyboard segue identifier. So this is the identifier for the segue object. Okay. So then in the calculate VC, you want to use the UI view controller's prepare method to pass the information you want the other controller to use. So do you remember that when you have a view controller defined, you're basically telling it, like, this is a calculator view controller class, that is a subclass of the UI view controller. So the calculator view controller defines its own functions and so forth that we've done here, but it also inherits all the methods that are from the UI view controller. And remember, the difference between a function and a method is within a class. So actually, all these things that we call functions are actually methods in the calculator view controller class. So if you go to the UI view controller, you can see that there is a prepare method right here. So it's prepare for UI storyboard segue. And so then what happens is when you go to the, okay, so this is the way it looks. Let me show you this. So it says UI view controller, and remember that's what this is, right? The UI view controller. So when you go to UI view controller, and in this page I can do a search for prepare, and you see the function prepare for UI storyboard segue, and sender is any. And so we create this or use this function in our from location. So the from location is the calculator view controller. So we define this new prepare for. And basically what we're trying to do whenever we want to shift to another screen typically is we're passing information. So in this case, this is that Tipsy app that we were working on in section 12. You want to pass the information about what the amount will be once you calculate the amount that each person will pay. And then you also want to send over the number 2, because it's 2 people that you've decided on, with what percentage you've chosen. So you have 3 things you want to send over, and so you have to figure out what are the things I want to send over to the results section, and then you put those things in the prepare for function. So that's some of the research you have to do first before you set this up. And then the next thing you need to do is figure out where you're going to actually cause this segue method to happen. And so in this app that we've created here, when you hit the calculate button, you want it to go over to this other screen. And so so right now, if you have the calculate pressed function, which is an IB action function that we created from the calculate button, that's where you want to say, when you get done with all this stuff, I want you to perform this segue. So when I press this button and you get done with all these things, perform the segue. And so and here you see the name that we gave it when we were over here. We had to give it a name, so that those names have to match. And that's how you know that it's sending. And the reason it says self is because this is a method that we're using from the UI view controller, and we're saying, hey, this is the method that we're using in the calculator view controller, this method, and so that's why we call it self. And so that should work. And then let me see what else is interesting here. Okay, so those are the 3 things. So first you make the connection. Second, you send over the information, or you set it up so the information will be sent when the segue gets called. And then you want to do the perform segue. You want to put that code in the function where when you press the button, you want it to go over there. And then the last thing you want to do is make sure that the button or that the screen disappears that you pulled up. So and again, what you'll see is if you go over here into that view controller class, you'll see that there is a dismiss method that you can use in that UI view controller class. So that's why when you go over here and you look at, okay, so when do I want the screen to dismiss? Well, I want it to dismiss. Let me show you the storyboard. So I want it to dismiss when I hit this recalculate button. And so we made an IB action function for this recalculate button. And so when the recalculate button gets hit, then we access that dismiss function. This one right here, that's the method in the UI view controller class. And again, you'll see that it says self. Only this time, the self that we're talking about is what? Is it the calculator view controller or the results view controller? Well, it is the results view controller, because now you see we're in the results view controller, and now the self is talking about the results view controller class that's a subclass of the UI view controller. So if you do all those four things, then you're pretty much set up for being able to access the screen you want and then dismiss it. And so the only tricky part is remembering which things to access. You do have the autocomplete functionality, which is pretty cool in the environment that you're working in. And also, whenever you make a new view controller, you do get this little note for navigation. So it tells you to use this prepare. It gives you kind of the beginning code for the prepare. And then you just have to remember the dismiss for getting out of it, and the perform for getting into it. So easy peasy, huh? Hope this helps.